Welcome to Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense. It's great to have you back again. And today we're going to look at overall the 2022 elections and roughly where people stand. But we're going to take a more particular look at New York. We're going to take a particular look at Pennsylvania because they just recently had two debates that were quite interesting and I think quite decisive in terms of helping one candidate in each race and hurting the other. But we'll be with that in a moment. We'll first set an overview of where all the races are. Then at the end, we'll tell you what we think. Here we are 2 weeks out with regard to the 2022 election, and we'll keep interspersing that now for the next 2 weeks so that you get a sense of what's going on. If you don't already have it, you may have it. There's a good deal of coverage of it, but I'll give you my perspective on it. And to the extent that I get a certain amount of information other people don't, well, of course, we'll share it with you or the conclusions that come from it. Disguised as, not really violent. Brought about by two anarchist groups, one a communist group, probably the other also, but one acknowledges a communist group, Black Lives Matter, and a group dedicated to the killing of police officers, hence the invocation at every one of their protests, and they claim they have peaceful protests. I've yet to see one. But even if they do have peaceful protests, every protest they're at, they will say, pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon, and then more direct things. But that's an invocation of killing police officers. There must have been 400, 500, 600 of these riots, some of them really major. They count 26 people dead just as a result of the riots, thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the hospital, tens of thousands of people in the hospital, more than that injured, police officers dead, damage in the billions of dollars, much of it to small business, much of it to minority business. All of that's terrible. All of that we've witnessed before. But here's what we witnessed in 2020 that changed the psyche of the American criminal. We witnessed large-scale invasions of stores, big and small. We watched lawless criminals take out the items in those stores in a violent way. And instead of watching what we normally would expect, the interruption of that, or not, if not all of it, some of it by the police, what we witnessed instead was the police observing it. Back usually across the street, not getting involved and letting them take everything out of Macy's they wanted to take, or everything out of the shoe store they wanted to take, or everything they wanted to take. So that becomes those are basically happening, a lot of them during the hours of the prime time soap operas and the dramas on television at night. It became routine. To the average honest American, it was just plain shocking. But to those inclined toward crime, it was a great lesson. It was an invitation to go do the same thing. Now, if you watch the retail invasions that go on, small or large, in Los Angeles has had probably the most, but we've had some in New York. Those are almost direct replicas of the Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots that were not condemned by the then presidential candidate of the Democrat Party, not condemned by any Democrat, tacitly really defended as necessary because the violation of civil rights was so great. The theory was that the murder of George Floyd was so horrendous that it entitled you to destroy entire cities of innocent people. That, my goodness, you couldn't contain yourself as a result of the death of this great man in such a horrible way, and therefore people were going to destroy other people's property. They were going to beat other people to the point of death. They were going to shoot and kill other people. They're going to burn buildings down. They're going to set up their own cities. They were going to relentlessly attack almost everything about America. They were going to attack outside those regions and and the police were expected to allow it because, after all, it should be understood. Finally, it was even worse, since this was the summer of the pandemic and everybody else was locked up inside, having to wear masks if they were outside, not being allowed to go into large protests, not being allowed to go to church because they'd be too close to people. Yet the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa people would march in the thousands and thousands, holding hands, linking arms. You could see them kissing. You could see them spitting each other's face. You could see themselves in very close proximity, most often without masks on, but sometimes with masks on, doing all the things that Dr. Fauci had told us were prohibited. And Dr. Fauci, who has since proven to be a scoundrel, was defending it. And absurd Democrat governors were saying, well, they're marching for civil rights, as if that's a cure for COVID. See, if you march because the prices in the grocery store have gone up too much, you'll get COVID. But if you march because somebody was killed in Minnesota and you don't like the way they were killed, and you destroy property because you're entitled to, because that's what it looked that way, and you steal property because you are entitled to, because, well, then you're not going to get COVID. So among other things, not only did it breed a sense of entire and complete disrespect for the law, but it also created a whole distortion of science to the point of insanity, really. So that unleashes the next year, 21, in which approximately 17 cities set records for crime. Now, it's not by accident. The cities are almost all, if not all, governed by Democrat mayors who were supportive of those tactics. Many of them are the very mayors that allowed them to happen. Many of those cities had district attorneys that were elected with the intervention, the multi-million of George Soros, and they were anti-intervention, anti-district attorneys. In other words, they were district attorneys who were put there to undermine the system of justice. They released criminals, large numbers of criminals, before George Floyd and then after George Floyd. Mayor like a mayor, sometimes a combination of a mayor and a district attorney, like in Philadelphia, which has now setting a record for the most murders in its history. So all this exists now, and this 2022 election takes place in the middle of that. So the number one issue is crime in much of America. Now we take another step. What's the other issue? The other issue is the economy and the fact that every day that someone buys something, they're paying more for it. Doesn't matter if they're buying a few little things or a lot of things, they're paying more for it. If they are head of the household and do the shopping for the food, they're paying bills that are considerably, higher than they have been over the past. Oh my goodness. To see something like this, you got to go back 40 years. They would have no recollection of a time where there was inflation of 8, 9, 10, 12%. I would, because I'm a lot older. Goes back to Jimmy Carter, actually, and was solved by Ronald Reagan. This one will have to be solved by a Republican president, because all that Joe Biden's going to do about it is to add to the spending. And when asked what to do about it, Mr. Fetterman, who wants to be the senator from Pennsylvania but doesn't seem to be able to speak, said, "What are you going?" He was asked directly, "What are you going to do about inflation?" And what he said was more. He didn't say any specific, like more of what? More release of more release of the strategic reserve. So we have none, in case there's an attack or an emergency. That's pretty irresponsible to do, but he's done that. So he gave no strategy. Fetterman gave no strategy. He just said more. So until a few weeks ago, because of the intervention of the issue of abortion with the overturning of the Roe against Wade decision, in which let's be specific here, so we describe the opinion accurately and not feed into hysteria. The decision did not ban Roe against Wade. The decision left the ultimate architects of what should be done about abortion to the state legislatures, because it was considered that this was traditionally within our separation of powers, which includes the separation of powers between the federal government and the state. This was a matter for local determination. When that happened, the Democrats put a little spin on it they're outlawing abortion. Well, there's nothing in that decision that outlaws abortion. So they struck a middle ground. They didn't outlaw it. They didn't mandate it. They left it up to the brilliant democracy of this country to determine in different places will there be different ways of approaching this. For quite some time, however, that was drowned out. And the Democrat version, spin, if you will, on it prevailed, which is those terrible Democrats have taken a right away from women. But as things calmed down and as it was probably over-argued, the actual nature of it sort of revealed itself more. And what it was an opportunity for the states to fashion what fit the morality and the decency of the particular states involved, from restrictions of 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 weeks. In other words, you have to have your abortion then in order to have it, to things like in New York, where you can abort a child the moment before it's born. And there is a question as to whether or not there's a certain grace period. Should a child be born despite an abortion? In other words, they try the abortion, but the child lives. There are significant number of advocates on the Democrat side that believe that you can still call that an abortion, even though that is quite plainly first-degree murder. You're destroying the child. In fact, over the course of the last 3 months, I'm sure, in the womb, you're basically murdering the baby. It's no longer a fetus, it's a baby, and you crush its skull and then dispose of its body parts. It's a barbaric thing to do, which makes one wonder, since we do it so often now, what has it done to the soul of this nation? Is it one of the reasons why this nation seems to have trouble adhering to a set of values and to a common understanding of morality on the most basic things of all, life and death and the responsibility of children? So that issue is not one that's going to get decided in this election. This is going to get played out in the state legislatures that exist. And it probably can get played out over the next 2 or 3 elections. But 2 things are paramount forced on us in this election. You can think about abortion all you want. You go in the grocery store and it's 10% more. You can think about abortion all you want, and all you're hearing about is your children being unsafe going to school, or another issue that's emerged quite dramatically with big division between the 2 political parties and almost everyone running on either side. Who really gets to decide how your child is educated, the parent or the government bureaucrat? And Democrats are clearly in favor of the government bureaucrat doing it and taking it away from the parent, and the Republicans are equally as vehement that it has to be the parent, following the American model. I will have to say that the Democrat model comes directly from Karl Marx. That's precisely how he wanted a child educated, by the state. And he's come pretty close now to achieving that, where the child mandatorily is educated by the state. And that has gone as far as allowing teachers and administrators and health personnel in the schools to advise a child that although they're dressed as and think they're a boy, they might very well be a girl. And if the child gets enough into that, the child can make the unreviewable decision by the parent, unknown to the parent, decision to mutilate themselves. I do not have a better way to describe it than that. I know there will be people that say that it's unfair, that it isn't mutilation, but to chop off one of your private parts is mutilation. It may be for the purpose of turning yourself into a different gender or something, but it's mutilation. Removal of a body part is mutilation. The tragedy of this is that body part is removed from an impressionable young child who changes their mind, and many of them have had terrible consequences as a result of this, having done irreparable things like that, only to find themselves wanting to be members of the sex they started with. And this is a battle in this election. Make no mistake about it. Democrats are very, 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 very driven to the government decides approach. And Republicans are very, 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 very driven to the parents decide approach. And that's a decision you're going to get to make probably in every one of these elections. Because even if your Democrat, your local Democrat, should agree with more of a you get to decide a viewpoint, the majority of the party has already said that is not their position. And your wonderful representative is not going to be able to vote his will, and you're going to end up supporting a vote like that, whether you like it or not, if you vote for a Republican. So this is something that has to be considered very, very carefully. So I think we will at this point take a short break, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. And we hope to hear from you. Thank you. With inflation making the price of everything really hard to understand, and obviously that much more damaging to you, the wonderful Christian conservative company Patriot Mobile, which is the only Christian conservative company that provides, the same kind of phone service as all those big names that you hear, and it's just as good. And Patriot Mobile, yes, provides those services, but they've been in the fight for vindicating the lives of children, now vindicating the ability to parents to be able to guide those lives and love their children. So many of the causes that mean so much to you and me, Patriot Mobile has been very much a part of. And therefore, if you're having a tough time with a new cell phone and you want an absolutely first-rate service, go to Patriot Mobile, patriotmobile.com/Rudy or 972-PATRIOT. It has plans for almost everyone. You get the same great service as you do on any of the other characters. And the money is going to be used for things that you find very dear: the right to life, the right to freedom of speech, the right to defend yourself. Go to patriotmobile.com/Rudy or call 972-PATRIOT. Use the offer code Rudy because it'll get you free activation. If you're a veteran or you're a first responder, let them know, because you're going to get extra discounts and bonuses and the special treatment you deserve. And they have special discounts, that will apply just to you of different types. Come join our movement and switch today to patriotmobile.com/Rudy. That's patriotmobile.com/Rudy or 972-PATRIOT. Thank you. This is Rudy Giuliani back with you. The basis was on let's be fair to the criminal. Let's be fair. Now, that came out of the Democrat Party. That's one of the main reasons I left the Democratic Party way back in the 70s. It's always been the more criminal party. It's always wanted criminals to vote. And I'm sure if you looked, criminals vote for them 70 or 80%. But now it's become entirely that way. Nobody will stand up to the wackos like Fetterman, who wanted to release a third of the prisoners, just like any third. He wanted to release people for second-degree murder because he didn't think it was as serious as first-degree murder. Did you ever contemplate that maybe there was something wrong with Fetterman even before? And he took some pretty wacky positions. Someone described him as like infantile positions to impress people. Guy's got a strange background, right? He's never worked a day in his life. He's had 2 government jobs where he doesn't show up very much. He has lived with his parents until he was 50. And they support him because they're very wealthy. And then he got married, and I'm not going to say anything about his wife, but you go read about it. And I think he may still live with his parents, and they still support him. So this is not like the kind of guy this is not like a self-made man. This is like someone described him as a man-child. And then, of course, he rides around and dresses like, I don't know, he's some kind of a freaky wrestler or character in a horror movie, or certainly doesn't walk around dressed like a responsible adult. Now, you can dress any way you want, but I also have the right to make conclusions about your level of maturity when you take the positions that you take and say that, second-degree murderers should be released and that you should defund the police. That's either a deliberately anarchistic position to support the movement of this country to a one-world dominance or communist dominance, or you're a criminal yourself, or you're stupid. And then when you look at the glaring inconsistencies that he couldn't address, I mean, until he's able to address them, nobody should be. If he can't explain how 2 years ago he was vehemently anti-fracking, now he's dramatically pro-fracking. And I don't know if he was able to answer that question. He just kept repeating the same thing. The woman twice showed him his prior quote. And the second time, she said, I'd like you to square this. And he just repeated. The second time, it sounded like a child who was taught for kindergarten to recite. But he took about, it seemed like an hour to remember it. Big long pause. And then he says, I'm for fracking. I'm for fracking. I'm for fracking. I'm for fracking. But of course, 2 years before, he said that fracking was the worst thing in the world. Same thing with socialized medicine. 3 years ago, he said that Bernie Sanders' approach to single payer, which is the best kind of socialized medicine, is the best thing for America. Now he tells us he's against socialized medicine, but he goes beyond that. He says, I've always been against it. He hasn't always been against it. So what are those two things? Is he a liar? I mean, he was before. He got caught in lies before he had the stroke. So maybe there are other problems here. And given some of his behavior, like taking the gun out and threatening the black man, obviously a totally innocent man, imagine if he was a Republican that did that. Wow. Takes a gun and puts it in the guy's belly with those crazy looking eyes. I mean, I don't know. It would be unbelievably discouraging if they were able to sell this to the people of Pennsylvania the way they sold Biden to America. I mean, we now have a president that's a complete broken down old fool who's lost the lives of Americans because of his irresponsible decision making. And we got a bunch of people who don't really give a damn about America, just care about their own preferment, position, and power, because they won't report that he cannot carry out the duties of President of the United States. Those aren't patriots. Those are just the opposite of patriots. Well, I think we've run out of time for this show. We're going to be on, just in about 2 minutes, which we're going to devoted to doing the best we can to get you to call us. If you don't call us, I'm going to ask myself questions. Okay. All right. So we'll be back. We'll be back with our call-in show. It'll continue on the theme of the election, but feel free, even with the prior show, feel free to call in on any of the subjects where you want information or you have observations. The purpose of this show is to contribute in some small way to the preservation of free speech, which is in jeopardy in this country under Joseph Robinette Biden. Not long ago, Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and his team fit me for my very own MyPillow. They also introduced me to their wide assortment of other incredible products, like their mattress topper, their sheets, towels, slippers, and more. Sleep is incredibly important to me, and I can assume for all of you. It's time you give MyPillow a try and see for yourself. Listeners have helped build MyPillow into the incredible company it is today, and Mike Lindell wants to give back to all of you. You can get great discounts on MyPillow products by going to mypillow.com right now and seeing each of the specially priced items, including those in the radio listener special square. You're going to see rotational offers up to 66% off on products like their pillows, mattress topper, Giza sheets, but also new products like their slippers, weighted blankets, robes, and waffle blankets. All MyPillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee. Enter promo code RUDY for these great specials. That's mypillow.com and use the promo code RUDY. This is Rudy Giuliani. We're back again, and we're here with Chat with the Mayor, and following up on the show we just did on the 2022 election, where we tried to deal with the overview of it, and in particular the New York and Pennsylvania races that had the rather interesting debates this week that might well have had a big impact on the race. I mean, you get the impression that the debate in Pennsylvania, unless there's something very, very weird going on, is going to have a big, big impact on the race in Pennsylvania, since Mr. Fetterman was as inarticulate as the reporter who described it, who was almost dismissed from reporting as a result of it, but turns out to have, if anything, underestimated the nature of his cognitive disabilities, which are severe. And one wonders how a major political party, his friends and family, can allow someone who can hardly complete a logical sentence, how they can allow him to run for public office and for a major public office like that. But beyond those two races, there's the entire matter of the Senate itself and the control of the Senate itself, as well as the control of the House of Representatives. The feeling, more than the feeling, the polling that I have available to me basically shows that the Republicans are going to prevail with regard to the House of Representatives, and it's a question of the number of seats that it will take. Will it be 510? Will it be 2030? Will it be more than that? Right now, when I look at what they call the generic ballot, which is a pretty good reliable indicator of how the congressional election is going to come out, it seems to me that there's a good chance that the Republican victory in the House will be at the higher end of the ones that we've had over the last 20 years or so. Now, I'm only basing it on the polls here. No, I'm not. I'm not only Here I am contradicting myself. I'm basing it on two things. I'm basing it, yes, on the polls, but I'm also basing it on the fact that you get the feeling that Republican concern about the future of the republic under Joe Biden is much greater than the Democratic concern of what would happen if there were a Republican Congress and a Democratic president. If we weren't in such a partisan era, that Democrat vote might even be higher, because there's sort of like a Biden has made so many really completely irrational, not even, particularly partisan decisions, but irrational, stupid decisions, dangerous decisions that if we weren't so deeply divided, I think more people would move. But I think the decision making and the result of them has been so profound that there'll be a lot of movement. It's like what happened with Fetterman. There'll be people that just could never vote for a Republican that will not ever put down a lever for Fetterman because they wouldn't vote for a man who doesn't know what's going on. I mean, you don't vote for somebody because you feel sorry for them, particularly if they're taking on a job that they have no right asking for because they lack the critical ingredients for that job, which is an active and strong and vibrant intellect, gone for now at least, might be able to come back if he rehabilitates. And number two, significant problem in expressing himself in a deliberative body that depends on speeches, negotiation. I don't know. It's like if you've lost your ability to speak, how can you be a simultaneous translator at the UN? You might feel very woke and very sorry for the person, but I'm sorry, you're just going to have to find another job for them. If they can't speak, they can't speak into the microphone in order to translate. I know it sounds stupid, but his nomination was stupid, wasn't it? And it was sneaky and dishonest because he hit it. Democrats could have nominated a person of total capability of doing the job. He might ideologically be as strange. I doubt it. I don't know. I can't think, except for Shapiro, who's running for governor. There's nobody else as strange and weird ideologically as he is. I mean, Shapiro and he are like clones. I don't know who's worse. And particularly in having given us Krasner or having had us hang on to Krasner because they supported him. And a good deal of the Democrat Party in Philadelphia opposed him because they have to live there. And just because you're a member of the Democratic Party doesn't mean you don't get killed. And he has set a record for murder twice now in that great city. And that's the kind of record that you have that should mean you should go find another job because you can't do the one that you're presently doing. You're not capable of it. There are certain criteria that measure the significance of a job. Setting a record that goes back 300 plus years for murder. I do also believe that last year they had more murders than New York and Chicago combined. Chicago is basically a killing field. The New York murders have increased quite dramatically. So I would think that Philadelphia and the rest of the state of Pennsylvania is pretty much fed up with Shapiro and Fetterman. I would think so, but we'll have to see. The other Senate race that could have a lot to do with this, of course, they all can, although if the Republicans hold on to what they have, and gain 1, then they have a working majority. So, or if they lose 1 and gain 2, that's the same thing. So that's why Pennsylvania becomes so important to them, right? So let's say they lose, Arizona. Well, that's represented right now by a Democrat. So that would not be a net loss. That would be a net win. But if they lost Florida with Rubio, then that would be a net loss. And now they'd have to make up. Right now, they have to hold what they have and win 1. If they lose 1, they have to hold what they have and win 2. If they hold what they have and win 2, then the majority becomes 52-48, which is a little safer. And there are people predicting 53-47, which would be even safer. But I would say I am persuaded that they're going to make it by a seat. They're going to control the House by a large number of seats. They're going to control the Senate by a seat, or at best 2. And because the momentum in the last week, the trip to Moscow, I was thinking about Moscow because of the money that that Biden got from Moscow that they finally explained. I've been thinking about that money for quite some time. I really have. But I mean, the reality is, let's see if we can get it down to the key races. I'm going to take one of my boards here. Ted, could you give me one of my boards, which I like to play with no matter what? No, not that one. That's well, yeah, maybe we should do it by state. Let's have some fun with the map. Let's have some fun with the map. Give me, yeah. Let's have some fun with the map. There we go. Let's see, what do we have here? Well, these have been used before, so you'll have to just ignore. This map was previously used to describe the 3 major entry points from the border. But so let's look at the states. Here, we can go with a nice clean one. Since I'm a Republican, I'm going to mark them all red, but that doesn't mean they are going to be red. I don't want to waste the time to color it up too much, right? So we've got a race. We've got a race right here in New Hampshire, right? That's a Senate race that's in play, in doubt. I would like to say the one in New York is, but I can't in good conscience because I love Joe Pinion and he's been a guest on the podcast on the show, and he'd be a much better senator than Schumer. But I would say Albany, we would just have to concede to the party that is rotting from the head down. This is Harrisburg. That's of course Pennsylvania. There's another one. So here are two. Here are 2 that are in doubt. One held by a Democrat. So theoretically, you could lose this one. And as long as you don't lose any others and you pick up one, you're okay. But you never know, right? I mean, it could go these are close enough it could go the other way. Here you have General Baldock and you have Senator Hassan. She was leading by very large margins for quite some time. And now he has made it what everyone would consider to be an even race. This, before the catastrophic debate, this was a 2-point election for Fetterman. Hard to believe, and many people do believe now, that Oz is ahead by a few points. Now, we come down through here, and we don't really have a competitive race. Well, we could go to Ohio next. It's going to go right down straight south, but here is Ohio. This is Vance and Ryan. And so now I will tell you the only one I'm willing to call right now, and a lot of people wouldn't because it is close, but I just have a feeling that Trump won this by 10, 11 points. There's a residual of Republican support here. I would call that for the Republicans. I'd say that's a win. These are toss-ups. That's a win. I would say the same thing is true down here. If we come down to Atlanta, okay, there's Atlanta. Oh, you want to put them in as? We are. So Ted's gonna be fancy. He's gonna keep them undecided. 1, 2. Okay, so we got a red there. I would say Georgia is definitely Republican. This is really not a contested state. Florida with Rubio, we'll just mark it off just to get it out of the way. Now let's go to Wisconsin, where we have a very important race with Senator Johnson holding on to a seat for a senator who is a very strong defender of President Trump. And I would say he has gone out now to a pretty darn good lead. He's gone out to a pretty darn good lead there. So I would mark that. I would mark that for Johnson, right? That's what I say. Okay. So now we go toward the west. I don't know if we're missing any in between. We'll go back and check to make sure. Nevada is a very, very tight race. Laxalt and Costas Matzos, I think her name is. I would mark that one. You can black right now. I don't know that I'm ready to. Utah, I would say that Senator Lee is going to pull that out. It's going to be closer than it should be, but he'll pull that out. So now we have Colorado. That's another one. I give that to the Democrats right now, unfortunately. So now that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Aha! I know. It's 8 races that they pretty much consider toss-ups, right? The black and the blue are hard to notice the difference of, but we can't. What would we do in Arizona? I tell you what, Ted, what do you think is going to happen in Arizona?
Well, in Arizona, of course, you have the Senate race and the governor's race. If we were to look at the governor's race, Kerry Lake is looking really strong.
And the other is much closer.
And the other one is much closer.
Masters didn't start looking good until about 3-4 days ago.
That's right, Mayor. And
the debate, is there enough time?
Is there enough time? And you have Mark Kelly, outside of the political ideology, former astronaut. Of course, his wife had that unfortunate incident where she was shot in the face. So those sorts of.
So we'll mark that one down black. Now it's hard to see the difference between blue and black, unfortunately. So that's okay. We can still do it. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red. 5 red, right? The blues.
Is this one still toss up in your hand?
That's still a toss up. I wouldn't worry about that. Okay. I consider that a toss up. I consider that a toss up. I consider
Nevada.
Toss up.
And Arizona.
Democrat.
Senate.
And Denver, Democrat. So we got 2 Democrats. I would say Colorado and Phoenix. So now let's see if we find a pickup. That's what becomes really interesting now for us, right? If we find a pickup, no pickup yet here for us, because if we were to win that, we would take it from the Democrats. If we were in New Hampshire, we'd take it from the Democrats. If they were to win Pennsylvania, they take it from the Republicans. Those are both toss-ups. They could cancel each other out, correct? Right? So let's say that they pick up Pennsylvania. Let's say that somehow, for some weird reason, because it's Halloween, Oz loses and Fetterman wins. But then if General Bolduc would have won, we'd be back where we started.
Yes.
Even Senate.
Yes.
So right now, we don't call that. This is a gain of a seat in Ohio. So right now we're +1. If we go over to if we go over to Wisconsin, it's holding a seat. That makes it +1. If we go down to Georgia and Walker wins, it's +2. Rubio doesn't matter. I mean, it remains the same. Now, when we go out here in Denver, they're just holding on to a seat they already have. In Arizona, they're holding on to a seat they already have. In Salt Lake City, we're holding on to a seat we have. Lee is holding on to his seat. And in Carson City, we're picking up a seat. So you see, it could be +3 Republican. It could be +3 Republican. It could be,
And
there are
that's
50.
a conservative estimate, right? You're still not ready.
That could be 53. And then it would be on the Democrat side, it would be 47. Now, if they split Harrisburg and New Hampshire, if they split Pennsylvania and New Hampshire, it remains the same. If they split these, it remains the same. If they were to win both, if they were to win both, my goodness, that would be 55. That'd be 55 if they were to win both. And if they were to pick up Nevada, it would be 56. So that's probably the furthest they could go, 56. It would be down to 56, 44. And that would be quite a margin. So my guess is it's going to end up about here. If it gets to this, then you have a really big Democratic, big red wave. To get to 53. So if you pick up New Hampshire, you pick up 1. Harrisburg means you don't lose anything. Columbus, you pick up 2. Georgia, you pick up 3. Tallahassee, you don't lose anything. Wisconsin, you don't lose anything. So we're at 3.
I want to clarify something, Mayor. In Ohio, it is a Republican who is retiring. So
I thought it was a Democrat.
It is Republican Rob Portman, who sometimes.
You are right. You are right. So take everything down by 1. This is 52.
And again, this is a conservative estimate.
And this is 55.
Because this is you. You're not ready to call PA.
Right.
Ready, so
it's 53 to 55. So once again, if you win New Hampshire, you pick up 1. If you hold on, that's one for New Hampshire. If you hold on to Harrisburg, you remain the same. If you hold on to Columbus, you remain. If you hold on to Columbus, you remain the same. If you hold on to Madison, you remain the same. If you pick up Georgia, it's +2. If you hold on to Tallahassee, it remains the same. If you lose Colorado, it literally means nothing in the sense that you don't lose anything. If you lose Nevada, you lose nothing, right? If you lose Arizona, you lose nothing. Oh, this was Utah. I'm sorry. If you lose Arizona, you lose nothing. The only place you could lose out here, you'd have to lose Utah. Lee would have to lose, and I would say Lee is going to win. So the most likely that we could call right now is 2. It's basically 52 to 40 to 48. I would say is the most likely. The one that you get in New Hampshire, if you can take it, the one you're going to get in Ohio, or not get in Ohio, rather in Georgia. That's where you would pick. That's where you would pick them up. Now, if you get lucky, and this is totally conceivable, and you pick up Las Vegas, now you're at 53. And this is let's put them in the order in which they're the most doable. The most doable is this one, Ohio. That is going to happen.
And that again will be us holding a seat against Senator Portman is retiring, and so you're saying as far as it comes to open seats, that's most likely to be us, Ohio. There's technically an open seat, but if you're able to keep it, it stay Republican.
The next 2 are Georgia and Pennsylvania in terms of likely. The next one is New Hampshire. And Nevada, about the same.
So in terms of
all doable. So that tells you that the chance of a Republican victory in the Senate is, I would say for sure a good chance. For sure. Not even, now, here's the caveat to all of this, which is there's 2 weeks to go. And 2 weeks ago today, I think most people would have predicted a fairly narrow but decisive victory in the House. I don't know if that's ever been in doubt with all the flips and flops and turns, and don't know that has at all been in doubt. And it probably would have been thought of as the Senate was going to stay tied, or maybe even go up 1 vote for Democrats. But now I would say the odds are moderately big victory in the House, not just moderate, to a small victory in the Senate. Governors, I haven't looked at as carefully. People, I'm sure, are interested in my opinion of the 2 big ones. The 2 big ones are Florida and New York. And I would say Florida is DeSantis all the way against one of the biggest and most dishonest scoundrels in politics, Charlie Crist. I would say New York is still one you can't call for Republicans, but it's just quite remarkable that you could call it pretty close to a toss-up, particularly after Zeldin's performance in the last debate, which was quite superior to Hochul's, and Hochul's ridiculous remark that she didn't know why Zeldin was making crime and punishment for crime so important.
And Mayor, what does it tell you that we're 12 days out? Hochul and the Democrats here in New York are bringing in the president. His time.
Tells me they want to lose. Why would you bring the president in? He might not even know he's in New York. I would say we also should say that the race in Michigan is a very big one and become a very, very close one when it wasn't supposed to be. The one in Arizona is a big one, and looks like Kari Lake's going to win that one, which might help the Senate, which might help the Senate win. There are a couple of surprises too, where Democratic governors that were supposed to win are one or two are behind by a point. I'm not exactly sure which ones they are. The race in Austin, Texas, with the I don't know where the Democrats find these people, like Fetterman and O'Rourke, but
Robert Francis, Beto.
Robert Francis O'Rourke, who was born to be president. It looks like it's not going to be a step in his inevitable destiny to the White House.
And as much as the media hypes up Stacey Abrams, that's solid red in the governor's race.
Oh yeah, he won that race. I mean, that race is over. I bet that race is over in the absentee balloting. They went too far there with that Jim Crow stuff, and Jim Crow stuff resulted in more people voting in the state of Georgia than ever before in its history, including black people. So I think that's a pretty good analysis of it. And I guess the question becomes, what could happen between now and then that would change it? A lot, right? But I don't think it can change it dramatically. I think that what could happen is you could go back to where you were 2 weeks ago and have a much more competitive race in the Senate, which might go to the Dems or the Republicans, or might remain tied. It could go back to that. I don't think it will, but you never know. And the House, the numbers could come down a bit, but I think the House is now inevitably Republican, and the Senate is probably Republican. And it'll be a very good thing for the country because the president needs a check and balance badly. He needs something badly. I think from if you listen to me at all, that I believe that the president should be removed under the 25th Amendment. I believe he fits the words of the amendment, which says that you should seek his removal if he's not capable of carrying out the duties of President of the United States. He has shown every indication that he has a diminished capacity to think and to remember and to do the things that a president has to do to keep us safe. And even though Harris is undesirable, you don't get to make that choice. You've got to make an honest decision on that first question. And the honest decision is that they should begin the proceedings, the constitutional proceedings, to remove him, which are always very jarring and always very difficult. But I fear that if we don't do it, we will get into a lazy pattern of allowing these people who are very unwilling to give up power whenever they have to continue to do that and play this game in the future. So I think we move on. But that's got to get decided now at the ballot box in just 2 weeks. Of course, vote. Make sure you vote, and make sure that that you say to yourself that you're not going to let anybody in any way discourage you from doing that. It's critically important that you exercise your ballot, and anything goes wrong, you report it, because we sure don't want to see the same thing as last time happen.
Mayor, what would you say to some folks, maybe even some Republicans, some voters in Pennsylvania who may have been strong supporters of President Trump, who they look at Dr. Oz as maybe untested? You know, some of them have even questioned if he is conservative. What would you say in midterms?
A lot of people get elected to the Senate that were untested and turn out to be great senators. President Trump was untested, and he turned out to be a great president from the conservative point of view, for sure. I don't think that's, first of all, I don't think experience in the Senate means that much. There's nothing you particularly do in the Senate that's intricate. I'm not saying that you don't do something extraordinarily important. You vote on the most important legislation in the world. You take positions that can have influence over some of the most important decisions in the world. But it isn't a job where you need to be there for 20 years to understand it. A good deal of the job you understand almost intuitively if you've been in politics.
And what would you say to voters who may, and how do Republicans keep their voters coming out if they're looking at polling and you're hearing, oh, Republicans, big red wave coming, big red wave coming?
What only happens if you get up and go vote. I mean, yeah, there is always a fear. Either way, there's a fear. If you're losing too much, there's a fear that nobody will come out and vote because you're complacent. You know, we're going to win. What the heck? But people like to join I think that's a little less true than the other way around because people like to join a victory. So they like to say, if they think somebody's going to win, and they marginally even like that person, they want to vote for him and say, yeah, I voted for the person that won. I think the vote that's unaffected by it is the Democratic vote in New York, unfortunately. But we'll see. I think that they will come out to vote in large numbers, and I think the enthusiasm level on the Democratic side, I should be more precise about that. I think that the enthusiasm level on the Democratic side is going to be hard to pick up. I don't see with Biden's approval rating being down at the 40 to 35% level. That keeps people away rather than sends them there. And
so in a state like New York, Mayor, President Biden has tried to paint himself as kind of a blue collar Joe. Will that work? They haven't come into upstate New York. Will this work?
Well, Trump beat him in upstate New York. I don't see how he turns that. I mean, if anything, he's much more unpopular than he was when he ran among the people who voted against him or had the desire to vote against him. So his vote in Long Island and his the vote out in upstate New York, and I don't know. I mean, if you're going to take him anywhere, you take him like New York City, or you take him to the middle of Philadelphia or the middle of Chicago, or where you've got the solid Democratic vote, and you want to bring some home. I would not take him to a neutral or Republican area if I were them, but I'm not them, and therefore I'm happy to do it.
What factor do you think former President Barack Obama could play or is going to play for the Democrat Party down the home stretch? We know he's visiting or putting out messages to places like Michigan on behalf of incumbent Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Do you think there are places where he can help the Democrats?
I guess if they pick Democratic districts that are still very loyal to him, that'll be places where he could help. But I think the nowadays, you go to your place and the rest of the press lets you know that you're there, including the people who dislike you, then find it out. And therefore, they're going to come out in much larger numbers. So, I mean, there's no easy question to it. There never is when a president gets himself in the negative numbers.
And what do you anticipate will be the top two issues? The economy really seems to be driving
crime, economy and crime. If you might want to make it three issues, it gets harder.
Do you think the culture wars? How much of the ongoing culture wars? Whether it's the transgender issue, some of the censorship we're seeing on college campuses. Do you think those sorts of things are moving people?
Yes. I think they're moving people, but I think that the crime in the economy has been so much a part of our headlines, so much a part of our coverage, conservative, liberal media, woke media, whatever. That those will be the two driving issues. And if you're right on both of them, you're going to win big. If you're right on one of them, the one to be right on, well, in New York City, it would be crime.
Are Democrats overplaying their hand on an issue like abortion? You're seeing them talk about that a lot in some of these districts. Is it one, because they can't defend some of these other big issues? Or is it two, they really think this is something a majority of Americans kind of put as their top issue? Or is something else happening here?
I think Democrats are hoping that they can revive it as a subject, it is a subject, and it's on the polls, and it's at a fairly substantial margin, although it is down to 8% in some. If I were the Democrats, I would not give up on it. I think all told, their repetition of it has hurt them. But I'd almost want to look for new and more creative ways to say the same thing, because it is the issue they're going to have to convince people on. That's the only thing they have going for them, because I don't think they're going to sell themselves on crime or the economy, meaning the government economy. It's at least the guess that I could muster at this point.
And so we want to get through the midterms, of course, Mayor, but looking ahead to the day after, the morning after, do you anticipate, maybe it depends on how Election Day goes, do you anticipate an immediate push from the Democrat Party to keep Joe Biden from running for re-election?
No, I don't, unless something happens. But I think it'll happen. It'll happen in the next 2 years. I don't see the Democratic Party letting him be the standard bearer of the party. I mean, he's too sick. He's too. He doesn't look like the kind of person that needs help. But we'll see.
Will somebody can somebody like Kamala Harris, is someone like that, do you think that she could appeal to a broader base of Americans going into 24? Or will the Democrats be looking elsewhere, maybe to somebody like Secretary of State Pete Buttigieg?
I think they've destroyed Kamala Harris. I think
Who's they?
The press. The press that loves them has destroyed Kamala. They cover her problems much more than they do his. And people are aware of it. And I think that coverage has defined her publicly. And it's very hard to work your way out of a definition like that.
Quite something, right? I mean, this is someone, Kamala Harris, who made her announcement, I believe, in Oakland, California. And at that time, a lot of the press were with her and calling her, the next president.
Soros's son donated the most money to her. She was I don't know if she was ever a front runner, but she was a strong contender. And then Tulsi Gabbard destroyed her.
So speaking of Tulsi Gabbard, what do you make of having someone like Tulsi Gabbard switching from the Democrat Party over, as opposed to someone like, we're seeing a lot of, maybe, I don't know if we call them old school Democrats. I like to refer to them as my father's Democrat Party.
Right.
They don't align themselves. They don't see a lot in common with some of today's far left.
They're not big with Bush and AOC, and they're not big with that. Yeah. So how do they vote?
And that's the $1 million question. Who is today's Democrat Party? Are they waking up to the fact that they may be losing some of these voters, as they did to Trump, and so maybe they're trying to shift messaging to bring them back, try to put out someone like President Biden, who's trying to paint himself as Scranton Joe? Are they panicking, do you think, ahead of the midterms?
Sure. I mean, he's fighting for his life to the extent that he can. I don't know how much he knows about what's going on, but I don't think he's going to run. I think he's going to want to, but I don't think his physical and mental capacity will be there. It is, after all, an illness that gets worse. It's not an illness. He doesn't have a, you take a look at Fetterman, for example. Fetterman has the possibility of improving. Not likely, given the kind of illness it was, but he has a possibility of improving. But Trump has had so many from so young, it's hard. So I'd like to say to everyone that organize yourself so you're going to vote. You remember last time, and by last time I mean 2020, not 21. There were large deficits in some places in terms of people that didn't vote. I think those people feel very sorry right now. This isn't time to make up for it. If you've got strong convictions about this thing, don't keep it between yourself and yourself. This is something that you owe to your fellow citizens to make a decision here. Watch, as many of these newspaper programs as you can, or read what you can, so you get an idea of the candidates, including the local ones, and don't neglect the local government. That's going to have a lot more to do with how we come out of everything. And so we need your support to do that.
And Mayor, how can listeners, viewers keep up with you as we get closer to this election? We know you're putting out content constantly, fighting the good fight, mobilizing good patriotic Americans to come out and exercise their right to vote. How can they stay in touch with you? I know social media, some of your platforms, your website.
I think the way to do it is to go to rudygiulianics.com and send us what we need to see there.
What does the CS stand for?
Common sense.
That's Rudy Giuliani CS.
That is lacking greatly in the United States. It's lacking greatly. We desperately need common sense.
And of course, you're on social media across platforms. You can follow the mayor on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Getter, Truth Social. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. And there's so many other places to stay in touch with the mayor.
Well, we're going to have to see how this emerges next week. This was a very important week because of the debates, and I don't think that the Democrats are going to give them, either one of them, give them another debate. I think they both made it as strong as they could. We'll have it as late as we can, and as short as we can.
So, is there any reason for the Democrat candidate in Pennsylvania, Shapiro, for governor, following such a poor debate performance by Mr. Fetterman? Does it serve any reason for him to go out to try and maybe fix things, protect his own race, and to go out there and debate Mr. Mastriano? Any line of thinking there? Anything there?
Is he not? He's not debating, right? Yeah, that's a Democrat across the board rule, with a few exceptions where they're behind or they're just really just naturally aggressive. I would have thought that he'd be one of those, but he's not. So the main thing is it's going to rest on the advertising, the appearances, what they know of the two candidates. Mastriano is a real American patriot. He went out and assisted us when my son was running and faced possible threats because of just a little headscarf that he was wearing, given what they were playing different things, playing different scenes. So he had to be very, very careful. And the amount of animosity toward Trump, particularly back at the beginning when Andrew was running, it was very great. Now that's changed. That's.
Are people waking up to the realities of the current president? Is that why it's changing?
It seems to me, and this just could be a process we're going through. It seems to me that randomless crime has taken over now. We end up with these crimes. They're not necessarily the mass shootings, but the smash and grabs in the stores and the people thrown on the subways, and we don't know why. It's just angry behavior, which is something that never led to such consequences before. And I really do think it's 2024 that drove people beyond being properly controlled by the laws.
Any closing remarks here as we wrap up another great hour with Mayor Rudy Giuliani?
Well, I would say stay involved in the election. Don't lose track of it. Don't become complacent, whether you're ahead by too much or behind by too much. I've seen many of those reversed. Many of that momentum. Momentum depends on whether people get up off their what and go vote. And no one knows exactly what it's going to be. And I would just get up and vote. So I would say that we're sort of at the end now. And I want to thank you for listening in. And I want to thank you particularly if you respond to rudygiulianics.com and ask me the questions that I'm really interested in conversing with you and going back and forth, because I learned so much from you. You're a source of knowledge, a source of wise decisions. So if you could send them in to me at rudygiulianics.com, you'll help me, and you'll help all of us that are working very, very hard to try to preserve the First Amendment. Thank you very much for listening in. Thank you for being part of this. And until the next time, God bless America.